It is preparing to start. So again, thank you to everybody who has joined us so far. I'm admitting more people in as we go, but Mr. Charbonnet, if you are ready, you are welcome to go ahead and
thank you, Ms. Neal. And I would also like to welcome everyone who's joined us tonight for our input session from the Lawton Chiles Elementary School community. I'm Jeff Charbonnet. I work at the school district in the research department, and I will be the facilitator tonight to try and give everyone a chance to give input and ask questions related to the rezoning process. Also joining us tonight, we have Ms. Donna Jones, our deputy superintendent, is with us. Kim Neal, who is co-chairing our rezoning committee and is our state reporting and zoning director here at the school district. We're expected later to be joined by Ms. Valerie Freeman, who is our equity director, as well as Mr. Reggie Thomas, our transportation director. So there will be plenty of staff here to answer all of your questions, and we'll be taking careful notes and listening to your input tonight. So let me turn it over to your principal, Mr. Tomlinson, to welcome everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Charbonnet. I want to welcome everyone tonight to our Lawton Chiles specific zoning meeting. That's the way I put it in all the emails out to all of the parents, because I know some people have some questions, and I do appreciate everyone logging on. Lawton Chiles, obviously, as everyone knows, is right around the corner from School I. If we didn't have trees in our backyard, we probably could see it. It's just right there. So I know that's been an anticipation on a lot of people's minds, especially closer to that location. But hopefully some of your answers will, or some of your questions will be answered tonight, and some may not. But I know I've sent out all of the information where to go into the district website to look at all of the different scenarios that they have come up with. And even with that said, those are just suggestions. So it could also change as time goes. But I do want to say thank you to all of my friends at the district office for joining us and answering some questions as well. So if parents have specific questions for me tonight, they can ask me as well. Let's limit it to not school questions, more about zoning. I might not have the answer for you, but some of the other people on the Zoom call might as well. So feel free to reach out to me too. I'm also a participant in the meeting. So I appreciate it once again, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Charbonnet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlinson. And we'd also like to welcome not only the parents and community members who've joined us on the Zoom call, but also those of you who are watching the live feed on YouTube tonight. And if you do have a specific question and want to jump over onto the Zoom call and ask it, or if you'd like to leave the Zoom call and just go and watch at your leisure on the YouTube feed, you can do that as well. We will be reminding you throughout the meeting tonight of some opportunities to provide input. And as Mr. Tomlinson said, at this point in the process, we are hoping for input from families and parents and community members, and to hear from those of you that are affected by the zoning plan, so that we can hear everyone's perspective and create the plan that is the most fair and equitable and efficient for all of the children that are affected here in the county. So on November 4th, there will be an in-person meeting down at the district office in the school board office room, where you can come and give individual input and ask questions of the staff members who are developing the policy. On December 1st will be a board workshop where we'll hear the school board members' reactions and their feedback and input about possible plans, and also a chance for public response there as well. December 15th will be the school board meeting where the new zoning policy gets its first reading. There will also be an opportunity there for parent input directly to the school board. There'll be a public hearing on the new zoning policy on January 13th. And then February 2nd is the board meeting where the school board will vote on its final decision for the new zoning policy. So there are many opportunities along the way to give input and feedback to the board as they work to develop this plan. Also, we'll be showing you the dedicated rezoning website that has an interactive map where you can explore lots of different views of the various options that have been developed so far. There's also a chance for you to submit a citizen input form there as a Google form, and we urge everyone to do that, because if you submit one of those citizen feedback forms, your data will be captured and tabulated, as well as your comments, and shared with the school board. So we'll get a good sense of the community of how people feel about option A, option B, option C, option D, et cetera, based on your feedback. So please, by being at these meetings, by sending emails, those are very, very valuable, but going and submitting that Google form is perhaps the best way to make sure that your feedback gets directly to the school board and to the decision makers on this. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our consultant, who's been doing so much of this preparatory work in the background, looking at all of the trends and all of the data and all of the traffic patterns and all of the other factors that go into developing these potential options. This is Mr. John Gilreath from DRMP, who's been just a tremendous asset to the district, and he's going to give us a brief presentation. So take it away, Mr. Gilreath.
I will try to keep it brief. We have about 50 plus slides to go through. I will let you know, number one, and thank you, Jeff, for the introduction, but I'll let you know, number one, that it's a privilege to be here tonight speaking with you. This is something that has been an honor to work on, and this is the very beginning. As Jeff mentioned, we are bringing you options. We are craving your comment on these options, and that this is a community mosaic. It's not anybody's individual portrait. There are lots of considerations. We're going to take you through as many as we can tonight. We do have 50 slides, so I'm hoping that we can keep comments and questions until the end. What we want to do is get through this and save the majority of our time together to hear your comments and respond to your questions. So a brief agenda. We're going to talk about an overview of School I, its location. For those that are unaware, we're going to talk about the capacity issues throughout the district. We're going to talk about the planning considerations. And you know what I need to do? I'm going to move this over. I always do this. My Zoom window blocks portion of the PowerPoint. I caught that by slide 2, Miss Neal. So thank you. She is my, she takes care of me and makes sure I'm not blocking the presentation for you. We're also going to show you the introduction of initial options, and then open it up for discussion through our moderator to hear your comments. So for those who are unaware, Elementary School I is located on 122nd Street, aka Parker Road, just west of Chiles, in the Oakmont Plan Development. So this is land, it's 18 acres that was granted to the school board as part of the Oakmont subdivision coming online. So the school is being constructed for up to 900 elementary students. The plan right now is to not fill the school completely to that 900, and I'll talk about some of the considerations later on about that. The location is in unincorporated Alachua County, and this site was selected by the School Planning Advisory Committee through 2017 and 2018, comprised of representatives of municipalities in the county, as well as public citizens who reviewed a number of options and settled on this site as the site for the next elementary school. Just talking about student addresses or student locations, where students live. So we're looking at zoomed in sort of in the Gainesville urban area, and you can see red clusters of the highest population densities. And we have significant population densities west of I-75 that we are dealing with. And I'll show you some close-up maps further on in the presentation, but just for everybody's benefit, you know, essentially between Newberry Road, Parker Road, where I is located, and Archer Road, we have around 3,000 students in 3 elementary schools in that area. So it is a challenge to divide these zones with that dense of a population. The information we have is district-wide. It's for public schools, it's for charter school students as well as homeschooled students. We do not have information on private school enrolled students. Some of the comments we've gotten back initially were, could you please provide a better overview of the demographics and the socioeconomic considerations in the area? And so I'm going to show you these next 3 slides. I think it's important to know that these are not the only variables. So when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about African Americans, we're talking about everybody else that's counted by the census, as well as programmatic diversity within the school district. So we're thinking about special needs students, we're thinking about English as a second language, and all the other programs that go into the daily operations of the district. So I'm going to show you a few brief maps, but know that these are not the only variables that we're considering. These are just illustrative of some of the data that we have. And this is data from the American the American Community Survey, which is done in between the biennial census. We don't have the new census data yet. That is coming, but in lieu of this, this is an accepted data set to use for long-term planning. You can see a large percentage of the population by census block group on the east side, 76 to 100% African American. But there's also some census blocks on the west side that people don't always realize are there. And even along down Archer Road, there's neighborhoods along Archer Road that hold large populations of not only African American, but Hispanic, Asian students as well. So there is a disparity, or not a disparity, but a range of the population west of I-75. There is a disparity in income as well. So when we look at where I is located, this is in one of the highest census block groups for median income in the county. West of I-75, we also have some of the lowest. And so there is a disparity of ranges in that area that I talked about of 3,000 students. So that's a consideration that we're thinking about. That is a question that's been posed multiple times in these groups. And I'll show you the last set of these slides. And this is the percentage of the population under 18. And you can see a large percentage of red census block groups indicating 25% or up to half of the population are under 18. And so we have a growing population. I don't think that's news to anybody, but we have a growing population west of I-75 with the development. That's something that we have to consider. When we think about school capacity, this is 2019 capacity. So you're looking at Chiles at about 108% capacity. That's not news to you parents. And you're surrounded by Wiles at 127% capacity. You have Archer at 113, Hidden Oak at 103, Meadowbrook at 114. So these contiguous zones to Chiles, there is a significant capacity issue at the schools on the west side. 2020, that story does not change. This is a little bit different of a map. We're looking at the red areas. This is over 90% capacity. So that is the threshold for school choice. So you can see the situation there. If it's red, it's over 90% capacity. When we go to 100, only one zone drops out. That's Williams on the east side. And so, you know, this is illustrative of capacity issues throughout the district. The highest we see as we move towards the west. Planning considerations that I'll cover. Capacity for elementary I in the surrounding schools. We need to think about infrastructure, the future land use and development that is either in the pipeline or coming. We need to think about diversity in programming. I spoke to that. It's not just racial diversity, but the programmatic diversity. And the student body should be reflective of the district's racial composition. That speaks to the school board's equity policy. I will put a link out to the equity plan when I am done presenting, so you can reference that. But for everybody's information, we are trying to match the racial composition of the district per the equity plan. And so that is about 40%, 42% white, 34% African American, 11% Hispanic, 7% multi-race, 5% Asian. So that is the district's racial composition, and that is the stated goal in the equity plan of the district. There's also the sales tax initiative that was recently passed. So Elementary School I is under construction. Idlewild, Metcalf Elementaries are either starting construction or have completed significant design. Bishop Middle School is also under significant renovations. And the goal of the sales tax initiative is to increase the capacity and remove portables at these schools. And so renovation or construction is planned at every school. And we need to think about where those renovations are occurring as part of this rezoning process. We need to not only make elementary I as representative as possible of the district body, but avoid making the neighborhood schools less representative. We also need to consider the facilities initiative construction at Idlewild. Idlewild's capacity is going to increase to 600. We're going to talk about Idlewild because it does have an effect on about some of these options that we're going to show you. And the goal is to remove the portables from Idlewild. We know there are transportation concerns along the major roads. I don't have to tell anybody who travels west to east in the morning and east to west in the afternoon into the city about traffic. And lessons learned from the Meadowbrook opening. We're incorporating more student location data technology that really wasn't available as much back then to the school district. We're looking more at future land use. We have involved the county growth management, and we're looking at development trends and tracking development trends. We know the large zone for Meadowbrook led to an immediate full capacity, and 2 years later, we had a brand new school with portables. And that is a situation we're trying to avoid at I. When we look at walkability, this is, especially as you move west of I-75, some areas aren't as walkable as, say, the downtown center of Gainesville. There's not as much connectivity. And so walkability can also be thought of as the area outside of that 2 mile required zone. Anything a student outside of 2 miles for a school is required to have transport provided by the district. When you look at walkability on the west side, you can see the red star for I, and you can see the Wiles and Chiles walkability zones just east of there. But I want you to notice that large gap in between I-75 and the Wiles and Chiles zones. So there are thousands of students in that area who are eligible for transport. They are not able to walk. They're not within a 2 mile walkable zone of any school. This is something that we're also thinking about for transportation. Transportation, we're modeling the scenarios. That's something that we're taking initial views of right now. Down the road, when we land on a final recommendation, we're going to be running much more in-depth transportation scenarios. I brought up Meadowbrook because that was the last new school to open. And I want to speak briefly on Meadowbrook because there's a capacity of over 720 students, and we have over 820 attending in 2019. When you look at the students who are eligible for transportation to Meadowbrook, over 720 of those students live outside of the 2 miles. So that's a very large zone. You can take a look at the full zone that extends south of Newberry, almost east of 43rd Street in Gainesville. And where these students live are outside of that zone by far and large. And if all the students who were zoned for Meadowbrook attended Meadowbrook, you'd have over 930 students at Meadowbrook. Not a sustainable situation. Idlewild. I spoke about Idlewild. It's in the same boat. It's in a different area of town, but the majority of the students who attend Idlewild live outside of that 2 mile zone. Capacity is going up at Idlewild as part of the redevelopment project, so it's going to go up to about 600. Right now, it's at 557. We have over 700 children at Idlewild right now, and you can see the zone that extends almost down to Micanopy and out Archer Road from Idlewild in Gainesville. It extends down Archer Road to I think it's Kanapahaw, Meadows on Kanapahaw, the development just east of Meadows on the Prairie. If all of the students attended Idlewild, you'd have over 1,100 students in a school that has a capacity currently of 557. there's more development occurring in this area that we'll talk about as well. Hidden Oak is another one that I think is interesting just for the fact that you see the donut that is just south of the blue square that indicates the location of the elementary school. Those are homes that are literally just over the fence from Hidden Oak, can see the school from their neighborhood, but as the street center lines go, if they were to walk to school, they'd be further than 2 miles away. And so it's not just a hard buffer that we're putting down over a school and saying everything within 2 miles. We're actually looking at the street center line distances and considering walkability. We've had some great comments about some bike trails that are within subdivisions that aren't always indicated in this, and so those we're getting comments back on that and on bus routes as well that are helping us understand everybody's day-to-day situation on transporting students to school. Terwilliger is another one where the majority of students are bused across I-75 to the school. And these are just examples of some of the different types of zones and walkability and transport zones in the area. And so the rezoning effort to date, we've built upon a half decade of the school district's planning data, student locations, student information, capacity information, the facilities projects. There's a large amount of data that's gone into this. The elementary I site was selected through the school planning advisory committee that I mentioned, finalizing that in 2018. The facilities initiative was approved by voters in the fall of 2018 and approved by the board in 2019. And board review and input has occurred initially so far on our first presentation and workshop. And so we have presented this to the board. We have done an initial presentation to the district advisory committee. We've also presented to Newberry, Idlewild, Wiles, and Archer. We had a 6-hour virtual meeting last week, and we have additional meetings planned that we'll tell you about. And so this is the time that we're looking for constructive comments on these zones, how we can make them better, your thoughts on them, and we'll talk to you about the different ways for you to put that input. Jeff talked about in the beginning. We'll make sure you have those links, and we'll show you what these pages look like. But to the options. So this is just an overview of the current elementary zones in the area. This PDF and PowerPoint is available on the school board site to go back and reference. These current zones are also available on the interactive web application map that we'll tell you about in a little bit. Zooming in, I just want to show the locations of Chiles, and Wiles. They're very close to one another. Again, you remember between Newberry, 122nd, Archer, and I-75, we have about 3,000 elementary students for these 3 schools. So this is a challenge in this area. When we're thinking about development, when we're thinking about future development that has occurred, we're thinking about the northwestern circle there. That is Town of Tioga. West End Golf Course is for sale. There are numerous applications for development occurring in that area that are coming online. We think about the area circled around 20th Avenue, a cluster of apartment complexes, Majestic Oaks, Cabana Bay. These are primarily low-income apartment complexes with a large percentage of African-American students. There are over 400 students in this area. Currently, they are broken up in enclaves to different elementary schools. If you look at the corner of Archer and I-75, we have Celebration Point, with a number of apartment complexes there, the Reserve, Oak Park Village with a significant cluster of students. And as you go down Archer, you have the Palms, and you also have Longleaf and Mentone. And so these are large chunks of 400, 170, 200 students that any one of these could fill half of an elementary school when combined with maybe another subdivision or another one of these areas. And these are the challenges that we're looking at across this area with significant development and existing development with high densities of students. So going into option A, specifically for Chiles, the Chiles zone would have, A would take in Lugano, would take in Eloise Gardens, and would take in Wiles Plantation, but stop sort of at the border of the Hale Plantation subdivision, would also take in Oakmont. Chiles would lose a certain amount of parcels going up 122nd But the majority of Hale Plantation, the area north of 24th, would stay in the Chiles zone. That would remove 85 students from Chiles. So that tells you about the amount of students that live in that area who attend Chiles. This removes 98 from Meadowbrook. Option A doesn't remove anybody from Idlewild. It also doesn't meet the stated goals of the equity plan, with almost 60% white students here. It's not really representative of the school district as a whole. Okay, and you can see the other percentages there. I'm not discounting those, but I'm not going to read them all down as we go through these all. Option B, this increases the total number of students into I 845. That's not ideal. That's getting close to 900. But it also doesn't go into Meadowbrook or into the Meadowbrook zone and take in town of Tioga. So there's a limit there northward with the development that's occurring. That development, those students would stay primarily in Meadowbrook. This does remove 216 students from Idlewild. You can see the zone extending east on Archer Road all the way to I-75, taking portions of Wiles out. That's Longleaf, Lugano, not Eloise. Town of Tioga is out on this one. I mentioned that. This takes in Celebration Point, the Reserve, Oak Park Village, as well as the development occurring at Finley Woods, south of Archer Road, that's currently zoned to Idlewild. This removes 426 students from Wiles. Option C. This is where we start getting into a broader rezoning effort. We're not just looking at that contiguous area to I. This is where we start looking at the number of students in I, seeing 802 students in that zone in 2019. With development coming online, we see 863 in 2020. That's quite a jump just in 1 year. This removes over 300 from Idlewild. This also removes over 350 from Meadowbrook. Let me zoom in now and we'll look at Chiles. And you can get a better view of this on the interactive map as well. You can see that this zone has Wiles Plantation in it, which is different from option B. Hale Plantation sits firmly within the Chiles zone. It extends down to Archer, but does not take in Lugano in this area. This increases the potential number of zone students. So this isn't the number of students who are actually attending Chiles right now. This is a number zoned. This increases the number of zone students by about 30, from 766 to 792. I won't spend too much time on the other zones in this option. They're there for your reference if you want to go back and ask a question about them in the question and answer period, but I'm going to move on to option D and spend time talking mostly about Chiles. I will say that we are looking at the potentially zoned students, and that in this option, we have an increase in the number of white students, a decrease in the number of African-American students, an increase in the number of Hispanic students. So no option is perfect across the board. I want to put that out there to the group. And for any individual, there may be an issue with any one of these options. And so we are doing our best to provide these options to you to get comment back on your preferred options, or if there's something that you really don't like in one of the options. Option D, the only change is the Meadowbrook zone in option D extends east of I-75. The current zone goes east of I-75. Option C, it's cut off at I-75. Option D, it extends a portion back east of I-75. There's no change to the Chiles zone in this option. These numbers are the same for Chiles. This just brings the diversity for Meadowbrook back up closer to the equity plan's goal. And option E. So this is probably the most dramatic for Chiles. This zone's 840 students located in I. in 2020. This removes over 300 from Idlewild, removes less than 100 from Meadowbrook because we've extended the Meadowbrook zone back essentially to its original zone north of 39th Avenue. But let's talk specifically Chiles. So Chiles, right now, the zone would revert back west to the original zone in Hale, which is where the zone is right now between Chiles and Wiles. That is essentially the 2-mile walkable zone between the elementary schools. Wiles Plantation is back in, but you can see that now Chiles extends down and takes in Mentone and Longleaf, but not Lugano, and also extends up and takes along 24th Avenue, Majestic Oaks and Woodland Villas. And so the issue with this for Chiles in option E is that this brings your proposed zone up 100 students, and that is not ideal for you. Option C, D, and E, we're taking a very hard look at this line between Wiles and Chiles. Nothing is set in stone. I cannot repeat that enough. We're not even halfway through our set of meetings right now. I think our next one will be about halfway. So we're doing about a dozen public meetings to get this input. This is an area that we want your input on. We know that there are bike lanes in this area. We know that there are people who are very attached to their schools. We know that people have bought their homes in some cases for the zone that they're in. Now, we don't take into account property appraisal values. That's not something that we're looking at as a variable here. What we do take into account is capacity, diversity, convenience, safety, transportation. And so we are looking at these, we're looking at this zone right here between Wiles and Chiles because of all the development. With Celebration Point, you have the Palms on Archer, you have Longleaf and Mentone with 300 students almost. And there are just huge pockets of dense students, student locations here that we need to find a way to make sure we can draw these lines that help everybody. And so we're very interested to get input from you tonight on that line between Wiles and Chiles. If you go, and I'm going to go back and run back and show you, I think it's important for you to see the line in option C is not ideal either. It runs down Tower Road. That is, there's not much I can guarantee in this world. I can guarantee that will not be the final resting place for that line. We need to figure out where to draw that line. We're here tonight to hear from you, not only on that line, on the entire effort, but in particular, I am interested to hear comments on that line. So I'll go back through option E for Chiles, elementary I. And again, these are available online for viewing. Option E is also a little different because it introduces Littlewood. And that's important because the southern portion of Littlewood actually extends through Butler Plaza to I-75 currently. It's cut off here, and the children south of 20th would go to Terwilliger in this option. That would bring Littlewood's population down to 533 in anticipation of them moving across the street to the transition school currently occupied by the Bishop Middle School students on the Westwood campus. You can see the Meadowbrook zone in option E, Newberry, the Terwilliger zone, and the Wiles zone. And finally, I want to show you a different way to look at some of the demographic information. And this is, we've gotten some comments back on the pie charts that they're kind of hard to read. My thought was it'd be easy to compare quickly across the board, but some people want to see the numbers in a chart. And so we provided you these both, and I'm interested to hear comments back on what you prefer, if it's a chart, if it's the graph or the pie charts. And finally, our next steps before we get into an open discussion. Additional input from the school board members. We told you we've already had a workshop. Ultimately, this is a board decision. We will be bringing recommendations to the board for them to decide. We are going to go back to the District Advisory Council. We've already been to them once for input. We've also gotten feedback from all the affected school principals. Letters have been sent out to parents at the affected schools, and we're having these virtual public meetings for input throughout the fall of 2020. Something that I think is very important to mention is the current district-wide construction initiative is adding capacity to schools throughout the district. And so this may result down the road in a comprehensive rezoning in a few years. I'm not saying that that is a plan in the plans right now, but this is a possibility. And so what we've done is set up an email for public comment on this. One thing I should go back and mention that has come up a number of times is, will my fifth grader be able to stay? If you have someone in fourth grade going into fifth grade, I know that Ms. Neal will have some additional input on this, but it is a board policy that fifth graders would stay, someone going into fifth grade. And Ms. Neal will elaborate on that, but I wanted to just put that out there because that is something that has been a question again and again and again. We've also gotten some fantastic input already, not only on the zones, but to look at RTS routes, to look at distances for commutes, some fabulous input throughout these meetings, and we hope to continue to receive that input. And we've set up a couple of different ways for you to give us that input. Number one, the rezoning@gm.sbac.edu, the email you see on the screen. That email is for you to post questions to the committee, provide additional comments beyond the input form so we don't have multiple input forms from the same person. We're hoping we have one input form and then additional comments or questions can be sent to the email. The input form will be provided to the board in totality, all of the responses to the input form. So that is the official documentation and for comment to the board. And so let's talk about that. Let me end the slideshow here. And this is the district's homepage, and you see the slider moving across. I'm going to try to catch it, but you'll see the elementary school I rezoning. We have a dedicated page for elementary I rezoning. If you look over on the right-hand side, we have a link to the district school zones policy, as well as a link to the input form. And so the input form requires you to enter your email address. We'd like you to answer your name and your address where you live. Select the following that apply to you if you're a parent, employee, or if you're a resident of the county. We'd like to hear your opinions of each option. We'd like to hear what elementary school zone you reside in, and if you don't reside in any of them, or if you don't know, that's an answer too. And then we have your comments or questions. And so this is where you're able to provide official comment that'll be provided to the board. Again, the email is also there as a resource for questions to us in the committee. This is the official input form. If you go back to the rezoning page, there's additional information. There's schedules of the upcoming sessions. You can watch all the past workshops and videos. And you can also access the web map. We've put this out there for you to be able to go in, enter in an address, zoom in and see what changes are going to affect you. You can bring in the different options and see the boundaries of those options. And you can see option C, option D, and E. And as changes are made or recommended to the board, this will be updated. For the life of these presentations, we're not going to be making changes, we're taking comment. And so everybody is going to get the same presentation, is going to see the same data. At the end, we're going to bring all of the input in and come up with a final recommendation to the board for their decision. I've done this a few times, so I'm sure I've missed something. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Jeff. We're going to be here available to answer all your questions. If I did miss something, Jeff or Kim, please let me know and I can cover it for you. I've tried to cover some of the questions that we've been getting, but I'll turn it back over now and be available here for the discussion.
Excellent. Thanks for that great presentation, Mr. Gilraith, and we appreciate you. And as we said, we do want to give everyone a chance to give input. So if you would like to make a comment or ask a question, if you could turn on your video, raise your hand, give kind of a signal that you would like to speak, and we will give you the opportunity to do that. So the first person I see is someone identified as iPhone. I don't know your name, but you can tell us your name, Miss iPhone. Please go ahead.
I think that's me.
Yes, it is.
I have 3 questions. The first question is, and it looks to me, and I could be wrong, but it looks to me from the maps that in Plan E, Linton Oaks, which is one of the swag neighborhoods, is cut directly in half right through the middle of the neighborhood. Am I reading that map incorrectly, or is that the plan to cut a particular neighborhood in half through the middle of the neighborhood?
No, we're following in that area in particular. One of the things we did when the pandemic started was, if you remember, we rolled out those Wi-Fi hotspots to areas, and we rolled out about 10 hotspots to that area. That was because of the lack of connectivity between the complexes, lack of sidewalks, things like that. And we're looking at the parcels and the apartment complexes to keep them as whole as possible. And so we're looking at where these empty out, what streets they empty out to, and the transportation options for folks from that area. So we're looking at it by parcel.
It looks to me from that diagram that if you're going down 61st, just before you get to the Swag Family Resource Center, it looks like it is cutting Linton Oaks in half. Again, I might be wrong, but
those are different complexes. So, portions of them will go to I. What you're looking at is south is Majestic and Woodland Villa is my interpretation of those parcel boundaries there.
Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. It looks, I'm very involved in that community. So it looks to me like it's actually cutting it in the middle of Linton Oaks. I know that Majestic Oaks and Tower Oaks are a separate one, but it looks like it's cut in half, but it sounds like that's not the intent. Maybe I'm just looking at the map.
That's not the intent. I will go back and look at that though. Thank you for the comment there and make sure we're not doing that. When we get down, one of the things we're trying not to do is draw lines through neighborhoods or apartment complexes, right? I mean, that makes sense to everybody. And so I'll go back and look at that. We spent a lot of time there. I'm pretty sure that's not the case. I'm not perfect. I will go back and look at that, and thank you for calling that to my attention.
And
Thanks.
ma'am, could you identify yourself for the group, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Dorothy Thomas.
Okay. And Dorothy, if you'd like to follow up that question with an email to the rezoning email address, and we can reply directly to you as well to answer that question specifically.
Okay, super. The second related question is in C and D. It looks like all of the swag neighborhoods except for Tower Oaks are zoned for one school, and then Tower Oaks is split off separately. Is that just a numbers calculation, or is there a reason that you chose Tower Oaks versus the other one?
That's a great question. And that's, again, looking at where those complexes entrances are. And so we're thinking that the complexes that would empty out to or enter out to University Avenue will go up to Hidden Oak, and that we're drawing the lines for the other ones based on the parcel and the condo boundaries. And so what we have not gotten is a lot of input from this area. This is the first discussion we've had in a public forum from somebody asking about this area. So I really appreciate that. And I do want you to follow up with these in an email, so we have these to look at as well. I'm writing your notes down, but I want to make sure they have that. So can you say that one again for me to make sure I have it?
That's Tower Oaks. This is in Plan C and D. Tower Oaks appears to be split apart from all of the other swag communities. Tower Oaks opens onto 24th, the same as Majestic Oaks and Linton Oaks, but yet it appears to be going to a different school.
Okay.
And then my last question is, have you looked at how these numbers, again, I'm advocating on behalf of the swag community here, which is directly what this is related to.
Yeah.
In order for a school to qualify as a Title I school or to receive the extra resources, there has to be a certain percentage. And have you looked at which of these plans would create a Title I school or bring extra resources to School I versus, because it looks like C and D bring a greater proportion of the swag community to School I with them. Plan E, it looks like it kind of splits it in half. So I was just curious, do you know which ones would create a Title I designation versus which ones don't?
That's an excellent question. Title I is something that we're talking about. I haven't ran those numbers yet. So that's something we can do. These are great comments. So thank you very much.
I think that that's really important, both the Title I, things like public transportation for families who don't drive,
Thank
the
you for
extra
that one.
hours, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I know that one came from you. I really appreciate that one.
Okay, thank you.
All
That's
right.
that's all.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, Ms.
Tom.
Thomas. Okay, Mr. Yang Lin, you are up next.
Oh, hello. My name is Yan. My wife and I live in the Copperfield community. We have a young kid who will go to elementary school in about a few years. I want to say that we are against options C, D, and E for two reasons. And the first is these three options go against the district's guideline that the rezoning would maintain or improve diversity and community representation of the existing schools. In all three options, the representation of minority students, especially African-American students, decreases at Chiles, according to the slides earlier, while the proportion of Caucasian students increases. My second reason is that both three options greatly increase the distance from our community to the school. So many parents from my community work on the east of I-75. So these options essentially add burdens to our daily commute. Ironically, they are three other schools that are closer to us than the school I. So, for example, Chiles is 1.5 miles, Hidden Oak is 3, while the new school is 4.5 miles away. We also have another comment / questions. So while we are in favor of options A and B, we are not sure whether the district will consider these two options seriously. That's because we noticed that both of those options are extremely simple, right? They only introduced a new school zone for the school I, but had very limited impacts on the existing school zones. In a sharp contrast, the options C, D, and E included detailed rezoning for up to 10 elementary schools. So the differences between the first two options and the rest are really shocking when you compare their details and rigors, not to mention the number of the slides the presentation included earlier. So I think it begs the question, why were options A and B developed when they lack the rigors of all the other three options?
I appreciate your comment, and I would beg to differ that they lack rigors. We spent a lot of time looking at all of the boundaries. The easiest way to portray A and B is by just having that one zone in there. I hate to use this word, but think of it as more of a cookie cutter. You're coming in and dropping in the zone. You're going to have the students that go to the contiguous surrounding schools there, and they fill that school up. So those options are being considered. We would not bring those forward. What we don't want to do is bring 8 options with tweaks A, B, and C to each option for 42 options for the board to consider. So right now we have these 5. We anticipate changes to be made. We anticipate bringing forward not all of these. You're right, because I think that there's going to be some of the community say, we don't want this, and that is okay. So
okay,
I would say that
I actually haven't finished.
Let me just finish my thought here. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Let me just finish my thought. In that when you look at A, we are considering the zones around there. The maps are easiest to show on A because they aren't affecting a Meadowbrook, right? When we think about the zones and the planning considerations to say, we're going to remove students from Meadowbrook, the overcrowding at Meadowbrook, and we're going to remove students from Idlewild, that's a long distance. And so we are having to not only, with option A, we can accomplish some of them. With option B, we can accomplish some of them. It clearly became evident to the committee we could not accomplish all of those goals with one dropping in contiguous zone. So that's why we started going down this road of additional iterations. I would say that we have spent just as much time on all these iterations. Maybe the maps aren't as detailed. I've tried to keep them as simple as possible for you.
Okay, okay, let me finish. Thank you for your comments. But it still doesn't really explain the fact that the goal of rezoning is to really balance the capacity of all of the involved schools up to 10, while option A and B only involve a small number of the schools. Okay, so I will finish very quickly. To our community, option C, D, and E actually very, very little in terms of, the shape of the school zone for I. Well, in my opinion, that option A and B cannot be considered seriously because they lack rigor. So technically speaking, the district only gives our community one option: leave Chiles and go to the new school, which we are against. So my request is that the district should develop additional rezoning options and extend the period for public input. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that comment, and I will again echo what we've said throughout. These are not final. This is why we're doing this, and we appreciate the comments that we've had so far. These are not final, and so these are going to be looked at. We're going to have conversations, and we appreciate these comments. These are great, so thank you.
Oh, thank you for considering that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Lin. Okay, Miss Carla Silva was next with her hand up. Miss Silva, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the opportunity of speaking here. I talked to you last time, the last meeting,
Yes, ma'am.
and I appreciate we have this opportunity in Chiles specifically, and I was expecting to see a Zoom in our area, and I see basically the same presentation. You explained why, Mr. John, and I have some questions. The first one, it's I would like to see the walkability map for Chiles.
Okay.
That's an important map that I think we should take in account whenever we are dividing this area. And I could not figure out. I went through every single document and I could not figure out, just like without a zoom in the area. And I would like to see both the I and the Chiles. Also, do you have this information first?
I'm bringing that up to show you.
The walkability map?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Of course we do. Yeah. But go ahead, keep talking while I'm bringing it up because it's going to take me a little while.
Okay. I'm expecting to see that because whenever it comes to zoning, it's important information because our neighborhood specifically, it's zoned for the options C, D, E in the I, and as Mr. In told us, the other options lack rigor and cannot take seriously, we are feeling that we don't have a real option that include our neighborhood.
Well, I hear you, and I appreciate these comments. What we are, we are considering your neighborhood, and that's what tonight is for, to hear these comments. And so, can you see my screen?
Yeah,
right
I'm seeing.
Okay, so here is your walkability zone for Chiles.
Okay, in the I. In the I.
And I's down here, so that's in a different layer. I can bring that one up in a little bit, but right now we're looking at the existing ones. We have Chiles and Wiles, and so here is the current zone. And you can see it runs pretty much on that 2 mile between the two.
Yeah, what my question, I understand that there are some areas like in between I and in the child zones that it will be, it will be the same ones, And my question is, why remove a closer part, like as our neighborhood, it's up to the north of Chiles, and remain some other neighborhoods, like and leave them, like in option C3, there are a large portion east to southwest 9th, 1st, being sent to school. Why? While there are clear closer portions south in the Rail Plantation and North Tioga, which it's not there, you know. And this part, now you are telling me that we are in the walking zone and we are sending to I, you know. And another concern is the social impact of that, because we have our kids enrolled now in Chiles, and they will be in another school, while there are parts that will be rezoned anyway and they are sending to Chiles. Why not put this kid that should be rezoned anyway in the I, and leave the kids that are in Chiles right now? And that's another thing. What I see, I went through every single document, and what I see, that's the problem. It's wide wild. I know there are a problem there. There are a lot of people and their capacity constraints, but I don't see your plan reflecting the problem, you know. And I think if we had all the information and we put everything like technically on the table, this rezoning plan, it's I think we need more time. I agree totally with Mr. Ng. I think he said that we need more options, because I don't see that these three options will address all the questions that we are planning to address. I'm just, for now, is that.
Okay, so let me try to respond through that. I think number one, I want to again stress these are not final. So the comments that you're providing today are going to be taken into consideration. To come here tonight and talk about why I drew a line here, why I drew a line there, in my mind is counterproductive in the 2 hours that we have. I would love to hear the comments on what you don't like, the options that you are in favor of, and the options that you aren't. And that's going to help us refine it rather than talking about why. I would love to hear this in an email, and thank you for coming to the community meeting as well. But please put this in the input form so we have this information and we can bring this to the committee. I understand all of your concerns, and we're hearing all of your concerns, and we're going to take them into consideration. There are a number of data sets, and almost all the ones I'm using are publicly available. What we're not going to show is a student location, student information, student programmatic considerations, and that sort of information. But everything that I'm using is publicly available as a data set. And so, you know, outside of the student information. And so we want to have these meetings to show you the zones. We can't go into 2 hours and get deep into the details on any given variable. So I'm hearing you loud and clear on your feelings on these options, and we're taking these into consideration for Cobblefield. Does anybody from staff have anything they want to add to that?
With you individually as well. So Ms. Silva, we appreciate
you
for your comments. And our next person who raised their hand was Mr. Gustavo. Mr.
Okay.
Gustavo, are you there?
Yes. Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
I hear you, yes.
So that's Gustavo. So I would like to add to that. I'm also speaking from Cobblefield, Fairfield Manor area. I'd just like to add, so you're asking about, first, thank you for your presentation and the opportunity to talk. And since you said that you'd like to know our feedback, not exactly the technical details, I'll talk about my impressions. So the impression from your presentation and the study is that you're talking in the presentation about the line that divides Wiles from Chiles there. So, and then you talked about other lines separating different areas. I noticed that you didn't talk about the line that was just separating Cobblefield and Fairfield Manor from Chiles to School I. So it gives us, I think it leaves an impression to us as residents here that our neighborhood was overlooked. That's the feeling that we have. Like, we are maybe feeling, I might not be talking for everybody here, I might be wrong, but I think there might be more people with the same feeling that we are numbers. The kids are numbers to meet certain criteria, which is not 100% clear to us. Because from our individual perspective, it doesn't make sense to leave a walkable school to a much longer school. And the arguments in favor of that are not strong enough to us to convince us that it would make sense to us. So I think that's the feeling that
Okay.
of being overlooked, of being
I
numbers.
apologize profusely if you feel that you've been overlooked, because that is not the case. What we're doing is getting input from you. The input from Cobblefield is great tonight, and we appreciate that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
We hear you loud and clear, Gustavo, and we appreciate the input, and we promise to take it seriously and to be something that we'll look at and provide further feedback to you. So I believe the next hand was Travis Prince. Travis Prince.
I think we have Miss I'm sorry, Miss Flay, but I was watching the chat.
Yeah, I had Ms. Neal spotting for me too here and letting me know.
Okay, all right.
So,
you guys take care of it. I'm sorry.
Well, why don't we go to Travis and then we'll go to Miss Flagg. Travis, you'll need to, if you could unmute, you are up.
Okay, how are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Welcome.
I am grateful. Hey, I don't know much about the whole rezoning, like all the details about it. I am a Cobblefield resident. On my from my standpoint, I look at it from the standpoint of I don't mind there being an option for me. Because I have two little sons, 7 and 5, that go to Chiles. They love it. I think I probably need to get a little more versed as far as like how everything is actually detailed in terms of like the different zones and all the different factors that's going into different schools. However, I am favorable for the new school. Even if I was to stay at Chiles, I'm favorable for that as well. I more so would like to say if there is a possibility, maybe that, you know, some people within that can have an option. I know that might be a far stretch, but I'm open to the idea of my sons going to the new school. It's not too far from where I live. So it's about, I think it takes about 5 minutes to get to Chiles. It'd probably take about 7 to get around the corner to the other school. So I'm not really against it, and I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm just open to the idea of being able to send my sons to that school. So that's pretty much all I want to say. It's not really too much.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Please go visit the interactive map so
Mm-hmm.
you can review the different options specifically for your neighborhood. I think that would help you. And then if you have additional questions, submit them to the email, as well as any preferences or opposition that you have to any of the options. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. Next, we have Colleen Flage. Miss Flage.
Me okay?
You're on, Miss
Yes?
Flage.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you, John, for your presentation. I do appreciate it. I am also a Cobblefield resident. My question, though, while folks are talking about lines for the rezoning, my question stems a little larger. And maybe, John, you can shed some light on it. Maybe Kim can, or maybe Jeffrey can. But my question stems from mental health and being in a pandemic. I understand, John, you reviewed that School I was provided to Alachua County in, I think you said 2017, 2018. And we are moving forward, it sounds like, with decisions in the 2020, 2021 time period for an impact on students, no matter who they are, will be impacted in fall of 2021. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So we are in a pandemic that is affecting the lives of children, that affected the lives of children last year, that affects the lives of children this year, and then potentially their stability will be affected again next year. So my question is, and it's probably directed to the school board who's making the decision, if we are looking at a comprehensive rezoning structure in the next 2 to 4 years that you mentioned as well, why are we moving forward with this now so that the students who have been affected are going to be affected again and then will be affected again? Let's say their kindergartens last year, they could essentially be going to 3 different schools before they go to middle school. So during a time when I have spoken with other parents and their children are becoming OCD, they're hiding from their teachers, they're scared to go outside. And I understand that right now, actually, literally, as we're speaking, there's a mental health training for parents that Alachua County sent out an email about, saying that we can attend so that we can help our children get through this. So my question is, why are we going through this now when we're going to have to go through it again? And how is Alachua County then going to address the mental health state of our children?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to turn it to Kim Neal in a second to talk about what we have to do to get ready for a new school to open or a new school year. On a personal note, I'm a parent of 2 young children, one of them special needs. And so I hear you loud and clear on the mental health. I think that a lot of us parents of young and teenage children are dealing with this. We originally had planned to start this process last spring, and that got blown to bits by COVID. And the focus was opening school or working with the state and the pandemic through the summer to see what the status was this fall. So this got pushed, and that's not ideal. And this is an excellent consideration. And thank you for bringing it up. I think Kim has outlined before the schedule that's needed to start registering students, the magnet programs, transportation. I'm going to turn it over to her for this to explain that and why we have to do this for a new school. Kim, are you there?
I am. I was trying to answer a chat and unmute. So the person that I just told I would put you in the queue, and I thought it was the wrong person. I think you must have changed your name on the screen. So I'm so sorry, but you are in the queue. So we've got a couple of people ahead of you. I'm keeping track. So on a side note, sorry. The process, and unfortunately, the timing of School I, we didn't know the pandemic was happening when all of that timeline was done. And I think if we could change that, we absolutely would. But School I is slated to open August of 2021. And that is not a timeline that we have control over to do that with. So unfortunately, that timing is just not a great timeline. Having been an elementary school principal for many years, a mom of 2 kids, one who has some high anxieties and different things, I understand. And we will be, and working with counselors and working with that in any kind of school transition, we would work through some of that. It's just going to be larger than ever with this. And so the school board has a tough decision to make. Our board members have a very tough decision to make about how large of a scale of impact are we looking at with this. Are we looking at more of a, for lack of a better term, and I don't like the term, but more of a spot rezoning just to get School I opened? Or are we looking at the larger scale like options C, D, and E look at, where A and B focus more on less transition and more of a not as comprehensive look? I think that's there. So I just wanted to put that out. The timeline, again, opening in August, is what John asked me to speak to. So I'll go back to that. Once the board makes the final decision, and right now, based on the calendar, that is slated to be finalized February 2nd, with lots of meetings ahead of that, finishing up our community meetings by November 12th. We have the input meeting on November 4th. We then have a board workshop for policy writing on December 1st, where community members can talk directly to the board. That first reading of potential policy to the board on December 15th, another input meeting mid-January, and then finally February 2nd is that final vote for the actual decision of rezoning and what plan, what option is going to go with, whether it's one of these or whether it's been changed and tweaked again from one of these. From there is a lot of work that goes into that to get kids into the school for August. So that is getting all of the zones set within our student information system so that we have all of those addresses set to the right school. It is getting our transportation system up and running with all of the new addresses to the new school. It is involves getting our school choice and zoning exception process switched over with all of those new things. And we'll talk about the zoning options for you all in just a moment as well. Magnet applications for any of the magnet programs, we're actually extending that deadline a couple weeks past what we have in the past for the last couple of years, because this decision isn't going to be until early February. That's normally when the magnet deadline closes. So for some of you, you may be deciding about magnet application to other schools pending this decision. So magnet application windows, we've extended a little bit as well for that same reason with all of these timelines. And then once all of that is in the system, then it's getting all of that working and getting everything rolled out into the new school zone, getting all of the allocations for teachers set. That typically happens in March and April. Getting it starts really in February, but the schools get that kind of in March, April. Getting all of the students rolled into the right places, all of those things come into play. So delaying, unfortunately, is not really an option. And we've talked about it. We've had lots of conversation about the timeline. And unfortunately, with COVID, we are way back in our timeline where we've been pushed back pretty far because these meetings we were hoping to have last spring. So we are months behind schedule, and we understand and we know that, but we cannot delay the opening of I. So somebody has to be zoned for I, some neighborhoods, some groups. So I hope that helps to clarify that question just a bit. I know John also alluded to this earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and touch on it while we're talking about all the change and the zoning options. If you have a child who is entering the last grade level of the school, so for those of you on the line that have current fourth graders that would be going into fifth grade, that would be, you would apply for a zoning exception, but per our policy, that is a guaranteed zoning exception to happen to be able to finish the last year at the school. It is not guaranteed, and it'll be based on numbers and based on capacity if they will go beyond, if we can go younger than that final grade level. So I just want to address that as well. So I hope that addressed a little bit of why we're on the timeline we're on.
And Colleen, I would just elaborate a little further on something that both you and Kim said. And I hear you loud and clear about the impact of COVID and the mental health impacts of that and the stress and anxiety that it's causing for students. Even if we did not have COVID on top of everything, there would still be this issue of we're in the midst of a major facilities improvement project for the school board now. And you alluded to the possibility of there being a district-wide rezoning in a few years when that's completed. And so I think that's got to be a pivotal decision that the school board will have to make, is are they going to rezone on a limited scale and just open school I, or are they going to embark on a zoning plan that may touch 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 schools and then come back in a few years and have to decide, do we again move these children who have already been rezoned a few years ago, or do we say we're not going to touch your area that has already been rezoned, even though perhaps changing it might create a better balance or more equity or more economy or more efficiency, because we don't want to disrupt children's lives who have already been rezoned recently as well. So I think between those two main directions will be a fundamental choice that the board will have to make. And I think that's something that was kind of implicit in your question as well, right? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for
Thank
your
you for that question.
And next we have Regina Bales was the next with her hand up. Regina, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a teacher at Chiles, and I thought I would just make a comment from a teacher's point of view. It looks like when I see all the options, I may be wrong, but looks like Chiles will take all of the federal housing on Southwest 20th Avenue. Is that correct?
All, no.
Looks like Linton Oaks, Majestic Oaks, or Tower Oaks. Looks like
There's two complexes there that they, there's two complexes there that they would take in option E, I believe.
Okay, right. But not all, some of the other options, is it showing that we'll take them all?
No. And currently you have Chiles has an enclave there right now that's not connected to the main Chiles zone.
Okay, all right, it's just because I was just wanna, from a teacher's point of view, just to make it equitable, so Chiles wouldn't end up with that neighborhood all in our school, because we have had that before, even before I worked there. And so it was hard to deal with the population because there was a tremendous amount of behavior issues when we took up all those three neighborhoods that were in that Southwest 20th Avenue. So that was just my comment. And I just, I wasn't sure because I really couldn't figure out in the map if we were all taking them all or what, and what option was, but.
Have you been on the interactive map and you can turn the different?
I have, but I wish I could zoom even more to give me all the neighborhoods that are in there.
You should be able to zoom pretty far in.
Okay, I will look again.
It's kind of like Google Maps, and you can be able to zoom in down to your street level.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Regina. Next is Chen Shigang.
I'm here.
There you are, Chen. Go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, let me thank you guys very much for the tremendous time and effort put into this planning. And also having this information meeting, I learned a lot from it, and also take us feedback. So I would like to, following many others, I would like to express my concern on options C, D, E. You probably can guess that I come from Copperfield. But I'd like to provide probably a different piece of information that I feel that many of the parents and the children will be negatively impacted on. So I see these options has these C shape and also upside down L shape. So the upper leg that goes towards the east, cut right above the Lawton Chiles, covers some communities. And we have been, I've been in Copperfield for how many years? Probably 17 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So I sent my eldest son into Lawton Chiles 13 years ago, and my daughter 9 years ago, and my youngest, the 6-year-old, last year for the kindergarten. So I've lived in this area for a long time, and I work for University of Florida. So I would like to talk a little bit the practical issue. What happened on the ground, the kind of impact that will this potential rezoning will have on us. So when I send my kids to Lawton Chiles, is going on 91st to the south, drop off, turn east, and go to University of Florida. Now, if we're rezoned to School I, then instead of turning to the Florida to the east, we're turning west and go twice of the distance, twice more. And then go there, it's about 1.5 miles to 4.5 miles comparison. And then once I would drop my kid off, I need to come back. And in between, there are 3 school zones, those blinking yellow lights. And then that's the traffic. The traffic in the early morning is going towards University of Florida. And over these 17 or 18 years, the traffic there's no comparison. Now these few
yeah.
years on 24th, it's traffic jam in the morning probably because of the new development. So, it's like we can go in the middle of the traffic going to university. Now we have to be artificially being placed to the very end, the tail end, and then traverse all the way through. Now that kind of delay also means less sleeping time for the kids, for my 6-year-old, right? Because how much time you need to budget for this, and the traffic fluctuates. And we need to go to arrive at a university on time to work, right? So you have to plan ahead on this. And this is not just for a day, this will be daily. And this will be for how many years, who knows? So I just want you guys, the school district, to be able to consider that kind of specific practical issue that this will generate, that this C-shaped lag to cover this area cut right on top of the Lawton Chiles. It feels quite artificial. Feels we are, we're placed into this situation by this artificial shape that is just stretched eastward on top of Lawton Chiles to cover us. So that's my feeling.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the information. I really appreciate that.
And we appreciate that. Very aware of the traffic patterns. I haven't lived in Gainesville as long as you have, but I have watched the traffic grow. We would assume most people work in Gainesville, but we can't put that blanket statement with a lot of the things, the development that's happening in Jonesville and along Archer Road. So we are thinking about commutes. The points you bring up are excellent and we appreciate them.
Thank you.
And exactly what you said, you were opposed to option C, D, and E. So that's
I do, because the comparison is very obvious, right? Because when this happened, it will be 5 years for me. Yeah, it's you see, it's daily basis, and the traffic is going to get worse. I anticipate that.
It never gets better, sir. So
I also feel it's a little bit artificial. See the shape that we are. And then when I drive to work, I will be placed in the very end of the traffic, and then going backwards. It feels a bit being forced into such a situation.
I appreciate your insight on that. I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
And next up is going to be Vani, followed by Adriana. So Vani, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. And Mr. John, thank you for the nice presentation. It was, the maps are much more understandable on your presentation than the actual website. I am also a Cobblefield resident, and I have a first grader at Chiles Elementary. As many of my fellow neighbors have expressed, I feel the same way that I school is relatively very further from Chiles. I know, like according to the policy, it's better to have the school closer as a bikeable distance to your neighborhood, whereas I is further away from our neighborhood. And so I feel uncomfortable driving past a school which is nearby to us and going to the other school. And another point which I would really like to ask you is, coming to the rezoning, you were talking about how you're trying to get different demographics and decrease the amount of students in each school. But in option C, you had told that there will be a 30 student zone increase for Chiles. In option D, you mentioned that no change for Chiles zone, but actually in option D, Cobblefield has been removed. So that is an effective change. And option D, you said there will be 100 students increase for Chiles Elementary. So, I mean, all of these three options does seem like affecting Chiles and directly affecting Cobblefield than any other neighborhood, I feel like. And so I'm like, why, coming back to like the I school, why are we the only one? I see lots of neighborhoods in between I and Chiles, whereas they are not being sent to the I school, and only the Cobblefield, which was in this Chiles zone, is being removed and being sent to the new school. So I am really unhappy with that decision. Hopefully, this is just in the planning phase, and you would consider Cobblefield to become a part of the child school. And also, I would also request, at least for us who are in Cobblefield and who have the children already in the school, to at least have an option. It's great that you're giving option for the fifth graders. I mean, for the fourth graders who are going to fifth grade. I would really appreciate if you could do for the same for the children who are already in the school. If we had to change from Chiles to I, please let us have the option, because like Mr. Travis Prince said, he is happy to go to I. So there are certain people who like I, and there are a lot of us who want to stay at Chiles. So if you can give us the choice, if your children are already in child school now, please give us an option to continue that school or go to the I school. It would be really appreciated. Even if you don't change your rezoning map, at least by giving us that choice, we have our children, we will have the choice to choose whether to continue in Chiles, which we really love, or to go to the new school. So if the board would kindly consider this, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you. Please make, go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Appreciate it. And our next person up is Adriana. Adriana, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Okay, first to all the people who are on Zoom, I've got a lot. So if you guys want to chime in, do on the chat so that I can stop talking, because I have a lot. All right. Mr. Gilreath, I have spent a lot of time. I feel like I'm on a first name basis with you. I have watched you for hours on this stuff. So I have a little bit of a different perspective. Obviously you see the trend from Cobblefield. I actually live in Sunningdale. Nobody knows where that is. It's actually across the street from Cobblefield. If you look at your 2016 data percentage of the population under 18, we are the only yellow, you have a rectangle, we're the east side of the rectangle. If you look at that, we have the lowest amount of children in our neighborhood on this side of town that is growing. And that is because we have been zoned for Terwilliger. My children have zone exemptions for the year, and we love Chiles. So we know the effect that it has been to be in a D school. Okay. I have a ton of options and some, recommendations that we could do, because when I moved into my neighborhood, there's about 150 homes. There was only three families about, with kids that were in elementary school, which is a little disappointing because we all are over acre. We have acre lots over here, and all the Buckingham. So there's 4 neighborhoods on this side of town. There is Sunningdale, all the Buckinghams, the homes along 91st Street, and the Westchester Manor. That whole section is yellow. It's hard for us to, get families in here because of the zoning. So I understand that these schools are over capacity. That's the number 1 priority. We all know that. Everyone's here. We all agree with that. I wanted to talk about the growth and development and the high density. We see on the west side that we see the pockets that you've put up there. We have the Holly Heights and the Swag area. We've got Longleaf and the Mentone. We have Town of Tioga. We see that. My concern is that over here, there's Cobblefield, all the neighborhoods I just listed. We don't fall into that. We are not into construction and we are not high density. Cobblefield is probably the closest. I am proposing in all those iterations, every single one, as everyone has said, goes up, you go up, you cut us all, and you get the Home Depot, the North Swag area. I would like to see you guys go up. This whole section gets Chiles. And just like you did the past boundary lines where Hidden Oak had a portion of Swag, you would take that portion and send that portion to iSchool. That would give all this section that has already been zoned for Chiles, they get to stay at Chiles. That's one of my, and I have a whole bunch of different ways. I will go through that. You also are splitting all of the Buckinghams and Sunningdale in half. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. I understand why you're doing that. It's because the north half of my neighborhood is closer to Hidden Oak. It makes sense to me. The lower portion is closer to Chiles. I'm not here to fight the battle of the north side of my neighborhood. That's their call. I am recommending that we need to go to Chiles, and I kind of have some maps. I think if you were to take that Longleaf area, that's a high density, and you send that to the new school, then that would allow you to take back Cobblefield, Sunrise, the Woodlands, Sunningdale, Westchester Manor, all this area, and we could go to a neighborhood school. Everything is growing west. Archer, Parker, we all see it. What's going to happen in 5 years, 6 years when, I mean, elementary eyes, oh, you're already talking capacity. We're there. I mean, we all know we're there. So wouldn't it be better to send the schools, or I'm sorry, to send the neighborhoods that are down and close there, and they would be a better fit to be rezoned in 5 years instead of coming up where there's no more growth. We've outgrown our area. Like, our land is developed. The only side that's not is, you know, on the other side, 91st, and that's being developed on Newberry and Parker Road already. So that is, when it comes to the growth in the density, I just feel there's another option. And I know that it looks pretty going out because you can send buses, and I understand that. But I think that needs to be an option. And you see how Cobblefield is also upset with that. My next thing is the education gap. I'm looking at a lot of the option C because I spent a lot of time when this first came out getting all my my notes and everything. And if I did it correctly, option C would send about 60% of Terwilliger's student body to the new one, correct? There was about 400 kids that lived on the west side of 75, right? And a smaller portion went to Hidden Oak. So that was about 60%. That would then make up about 40 to 45% of the new school's student body, right? Give or take?
Give or take, yeah.
Right. That is I feel a very hard thing for teachers to do, especially kindergarten and elementary. I mean, kindergarten and first grade. You are taking, those students are from a CD school who maybe have not as many resources, and you're now putting them with students that probably had the most resources. Those students in this area have been coming from a whole bunch of the preschools around here, whether it's, you know, Abacus, Abiding Savior, Westside Baptist. They are coming into school knowing their uppercase, lowercase, their sounds, they're knowing sight words already. And then you're having kids with, I have had friends that were teachers, and they have said, you know, at Terwilliger, it's a struggle. You know, a lot of these kids don't know that. So you're having teachers having to, this big this big education gap that Alachua is trying to shrink. But you also have to cater to those who, you know, you have to push the you know, make those ones go up. And I think that's a big gap. That's a big ask for teachers. How is the school board going to accommodate this? Are they expecting the teachers? Are they going to get interns? How are they going to do that? I feel like, and maybe one of the teachers, I don't know, I'm not a teacher here, but I think that's a big struggle that the iSchool is going to have if iteration C or iteration 9 option C goes through. I also am looking at your data, and you have the ESC chart with the ELL and the 504s. I don't see any data when it goes to options D and E, but from option, I'm getting confused, from option 1 to option 9, the ESCs doubled. And that puts another hardship on a school. That is a lot of IEPs to write. That is a lot of 504s to write. You need a staff of guidance counselors. I mean, you need, and in ESC, you know, a lot of people think ESC is just students who are special needs. It's not. It's the gifted kids. And you're going to need those.
Absolutely.
You're going to need gifted teachers, paraprofessionals, speech therapists. You're going to need runners, volunteers, because these kids have to get places. Kids are being, you know, they get late to classes. I mean, it jumped from, I think it was like, oh, here, I have it here. It was 65 in iteration 1, and it goes to 125 in iteration 9. I mean, that's a big stress, I think, on a school. So I think that's also something that needs to be looked at. I also reached out to figure out about the swag and transportation, and I completely understand it. Does anybody want to talk? Just checking in. If anybody, okay.
Does anyone else have their hand raised, Adriana?
I don't see it on my end, but I just wanted to make sure, because I know a lot of people from Cobblefield. They, you know, one of my best friends live in Cobblefield, and I know Cobblefield is, you know, they want to stay in Chiles.
There are three other people who are waiting to speak after you.
So do you want me to continue? You want them to pop in? I'm fine waiting. Your call, guys.
I mean,
okay.
If you can kind of continue.
Okay. So I also think, hold on, I lost my papers. Where did I go? I got sidetracked. So I have a ton of options, John, for you. That it goes from Newberry all the way to Hidden Oak. I think, I know that there's so much, John. I'm going to send you an email because I really think I did a.
Let me stop you there. Please send it to the rezoning, not to my personal one.
No, I don't know your personal. No, I'm going to
Okay.
send it to the rezoning. I feel that in none of the iterations, everything west of 75, it's almost like you can't cross 75 anymore. I think if the lower part of swag that used to go to Hidden Oak, if you can take a portion of that and bus them. You know, you get that lower portion, you bus them across 75 where the traffic's not as bad. You're going to have a light there with the new road being built in there. Bus is going to be able to turn out easier. You then increase your racial composition at Terwilliger, because you saw from when iteration 9 hit, they went from, I'm not sure, like 50 something % down to 17. And that's not meeting the school's composition, their goal. So if you can take a portion of that just jumps over 75 a little bit, that then raises your composition and your student body numbers, because it went down. I think they still had 300 spots available in that winter iteration. And I feel like that's why you then pushed north to gain students. And then that's where Meadowbrook got mad. So if you can, because Meadowbrook wants to stay, what I've heard on the 39th, they don't want to have to drive all the way down to Terwilliger, which I get. So if you can take some out lower swag, send it to Terwilliger. Chiles almost keeps their original zoning. They go down and possibly get Bellamy Grand and Grandview. That increases more, takes relief off Wiles. They can also push down on Wiles and get Portofino, and there's another neighborhood, which takes more pressure off Wiles. Then Longleaf and that Mentone could possibly go to the other school, which takes pressure off Wiles. They get zoned for a school that they could get to access to. And then you have the Meadowbrook, and it's a puzzle that just keeps going. And I don't think anyone's looked at it on that end, was sending some of the kids back to Terwilliger. And I think if you do that, more possibility.
I would disagree with that.
You would?
I would disagree with that, but.
Well, we just don't see any of those options. You know, we don't see that. So
that's absolutely true. And, you know, I do want other people to get a chance to speak, because these are excellent comments. And I think you need to put it in a well thought out long email for us to review. And I really appreciate you taking the time to look at it, thinking about it from this perspective. I would caution you on making judgments on subdivisions, not knowing the exact number of students in there, but these are great suggestions and I really appreciate it. we have looked at everything that you all have brought up. I'll just
Okay.
leave it there. So, I mean, we've been doing this for a while. I don't want it to negate what people are saying. What we want today is to get this input. And so we're getting fantastic input today from all of you. So thank you for it. I don't want to cut you short. I want to hear that email. I want to see the email, but we also have 20 minutes left. I want to make sure we get to everybody. And so I'm going to pass it back to the moderators. Thank you for that. Those are great comments.
Thank you, guys.
Adriana, and we have taken pages of notes on the comments we've gotten tonight, and this is the kind of input we need because, like we said, these options are not complete. They can be whole new options can be created. The options that exist can be tweaked and changed, and so we appreciate hearing from the people that are impacted. And next up is Kale. Kale.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's your last name, Kale?
Plaguey. Thanks for taking the time to do this today. And you know, Ms. Kim Neal, I'd like to really echo that mental health issue. You had mentioned spot zoning to get the school open, and I believe that's clearly the best option. I know there's a lot of momentum from years of planning on this, but any option that disrupts the minimal amount of students is going to be the best in this, COVID-19 environment. I'd like to point out again that Jackie Johnson sent a link out to all the parents about a mental health workshop. And I believe it's actually going on right now. I think it started at 6 o'clock tonight. So the district, acknowledges that this pandemic is a very stressful time for children, very stressful time for families. And now is not the time to introduce more stress and more change and more anxiety with a major zoning change. I mean, I understand you need to get the school open. I'm sure Oakmont is expecting that school to open. They moved there knowing it's going to open. Again, I think that spot change is going to be the best option. And getting rezoned twice with that future comprehensive rezoning seems like a real possibility for Cobblefield. So that means, our kids, being at being at Chiles now, getting rezoned for I, possibly getting rezoned somewhere else in a few years. Because School I is not the obvious choice for us. We're solidly within that 1.5 mile zone from Chiles, very walkable. I think on a bad day, it takes me 3 minutes to get there. So I could definitely see a possibility of getting zoned for I, then rezoned again during the comprehensive rezoning in a few years. So I really urge everybody to present to the board the option that's least disruptive and moves the least amount of kids right now. And, again, spot zoning, I really think that's going to be the best to open the school until that comprehensive rezoning happens.
You have a preference between A and B?
I've heard that A is completely off the table, so I mean, I'll have to go.
No. Nothing's off the table. I'm interested to hear
well, Brian's not here anymore, so we can talk about him, I guess. But Brian has said that A is pretty much off the table.
Brian's not here anymore.
None of the options at this point are off the table. We're looking at all of them. We may be tweaking different pieces and parts of them based on all of these feedback meetings that we're having. So right now, nothing's off the table. I know Brian believes A is not as likely, but right now everything will be presented at this
point. And again, just the least disruptive seems like the best choice right now. If that rezoning is happening in a few years, that's when you go in and really fine tune everything, especially with all the construction that's happening. It just seems like the best case scenario right now.
Kale, we hear you. We thank you for your input, and we hope you and everyone will use that citizen input form to rate your preferences on each of those options that are available as well.
Will do. Thank you.
Back to Carla Silva for a follow-up comment, and we have about 15 minutes on our allotted time here. So Ms. Silva, you are up for some follow-up.
Thank you again. I just want to comment that I think it's an easy fix, I sent you a presentation in the zoning email that there an area that we are displaced, I would say. And I think if we can consider this area like in the zoning, as Adriana and I think mostly, I think all of us, as with few exceptions, we agree to stand on Chiles, and even to give option, you know, as other parents told here, give option to stay, you know, in this borderline, like a buffer area that can choose between schools or something similar, that we can, I think it will be perceived as fair by most parents.
Okay.
Just that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And next is Ming. Ming, go ahead.
Hi, I'm here, yes. Well, first of all, thank you all very much for this effort. That's a very comprehensive plan you guys have put forward. So I guess most of my points has already been brought up before. I just want to echo those. And I think traffic is definitely one of the biggest kind of concern that we in Coblefield, I forgot to mention that, but I cannot promise I will be the last one from Coblefield. I think traffic is the most concern that we have. And with those C-shaped zones that currently being proposed, you're kind of bringing the, the northeast and southeast area into the middle. So it's kind of, before they can go from Archer or Newbury to UF, but now everybody has to go to 24th to go to UF. That's going to create a tremendous amount of problem. And I kind of can see why Coblefield, where north of 8th, sorry, north of 20th, being kind of rezoned, probably because of we want to take care of the problem in the villager. But I think the option that I would like to propose is probably use bus, the public transportation, for those students to go to a new school. But the more convenient zones, like all the neighbors that are here tonight, we could still have the option to go to Chiles, because that's really the closest position. I mean, we're within walking distance. And I know Mr. Prince mentioned before that it's just around the corner, but that's in a good day. Like during morning hours, I have actually drove like 15 minutes from Chiles to UF in a bad day. So I mean, imagine that everybody have to do that every day. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of burden on society as well. Like we lose all the valuable working time. So I think I want to echo that on traffic. And then the other good point that a lot of people already brought up is the options. That if I know this will be very difficult to plan from the board point of view, but if we could have that option in these, I guess, overlapping areas, I think that would be also very helpful. But again, I want to thank you guys for bringing up all these options. From what I heard when you did the presentation, it seems like most of the thought are putting into between option D and E, the line between Wiles and Chiles. But I want to stress that I think right now, I mean, as you can see from here, what we were concerned is about the northern boundary of Chiles. I think that makes a lot of disruption. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's a great point.
Thank you, Ming. We appreciate your thoughtful comments. And next is Tara.
Yes, hi, thank you so much. I actually have just one really quick question.
Tara, what's your last name?
My last name is Blum, B-L-U-M.
Okay.
I actually live in Oakmont. And according to all models, we know that Oakmont is being rezoned for the new school, and rightfully so, given its location. However, I am also the mother of 2 ESE students who chose Oakmont specifically to send my children to Chiles because of their strong ESE program. I am just wondering, given the fact that it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to put together a solid ESE program, if those who have children in ESE, if we would be allowed to consider a zoning exemption to stay at our current school.
Yeah, I will address that. You can apply for a zoning exception, and we do look at all of those individual circumstances. So as part of that application process, when that opens later in the spring, letting us know that rationale, because I think knowing the rationale would be important in that, because we are looking at, we've got to reduce those sizes, but in specific circumstances, that is a key important piece. And so, you know, with that being a need for your children, that would definitely be something that we would consider. I can't promise a guaranteed approval, but absolutely to be considered. The other option that is available for our ESE students and students with 504 plans and some other things is also what's called a McKay Scholarship that could be applied for in order to remain where children have been successful. So if the rezoning, well, you said you're in Oakmont, so it is going to impact you, as you said, at the time that that occurs. And if that's something that you want to apply for, again, it opens in the spring for the zoning exceptions. You're always welcome to contact me. We can talk through all of those options in a little more specificity of those options, but you could definitely apply for either the zoning exception or a McKay Scholarship.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tara. And as we're coming up on the 8 o'clock hour, I don't see any further hands raised. Is there anyone who has?
I have a private chat from Vani who would like to speak again. Vani, I don't control that, so you're going to need to.
Vani, if you're still there, would like to speak, please go ahead.
Yes, sir, I would like to. So I forgot to mention this point. So the main thing I was told for the rezoning part is to make sure there is a diverse population in the school. So my another thought I had was like, why don't we make iSchool as a magnet program? Then definitely we'll have a diverse population from various schools, and that will take away all of this much stress from rezoning and all that, because once it becomes magnet program, there will be children from all over the Gainesville area coming to this new school, and we will have the diverse population which we need. So if I am not sure how it takes and what is the process behind it and all that, but I just thought this would be a suggestion to convert the iSchool into a magnet program, because we definitely don't have on this end of the town a good magnet school. So by making this a magnet school, it will bring many more children to this school.
Well, Vani, that is some outside of the box thinking. So we had not had that suggestion yet. And I think that's very creative. So I appreciate
Thank you.
it. And I think there may still be a couple of others. I see Lorraine turned her camera on and may perhaps has a comment. And Melissa also had a question. Lorraine, why don't you go first? Then we'll go to Melissa.
Hi, thank you. I live in Cobblefield as well. I live in Cobblefield as well, and I have a little bit of a different question, actually.
Last name?
Petro, P-E-T-R-O. So we moved to Alachua County last July, and I did quite a bit of research in terms of where I wanted to buy a home. And a lot of it was based on talking to principals on the phone, because I was from a remote location, and I had kind of ruled it down to Tomlinson and Chiles and the principal at Hidden Oak. And so it was really kind of a toss-up as to where I was going to find a house. So we found a house in a location that was close to Chiles, within walking distance. And I think Tomlinson walks on water. So my question is, has the principal been chosen for the new school? And what promises that it's not going to be Tomlinson?
It's an excellent question. Kim or Jeff?
Well, no, the principal has not been chosen. In fact, the name hasn't been chosen for the school. The teachers haven't been chosen for the school. All of those things are still yet to be determined. Typically, when a principalship is vacant, the superintendent asks the sitting principals if any of them would like to be considered for the new vacant position. So, they don't typically move principals against their will if they're established and where they're being successful. But I was a principal for 19 years in this school district, and we all serve at the pleasure of the superintendent, and when she asks us to go somewhere, we go. So I can't tell you that Mr. Tomlinson would not be moved, but there's strong evidence that he would not be moved against his will.
So then we have to pressure him not to apply. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Melissa, did you have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to ask regarding a lot of the major apartment complexes that are going up in the area. I'm actually a small business owner in the Hale Plantation area. And I know also very well of the growth going on in the Arbor Greens area, the very large apartment complexes going up at the corner of Parker Road and Newberry, and also in the Arbor Greens area. And I know you guys are in communication with the County Growth Management Department, and I wanted to make sure that you guys were considering those large complexes when you're looking at your zoning maps, especially between Meadowbrook and Zone I and Chiles.
Absolutely. Part of what we do throughout the year is track development review. So we know when things are coming online, and we publish a concurrency report in conjunction with all the municipalities in the county every year, talking about the anticipated developments, or actually developments that are on track. Let's just use that term. We're also looking at the potential number of students that those developments would generate. That area, when you go on the county growth management site, there's a bit of a misconception that all the developments occurring on Archer, and essentially the urban cluster as part of the county comprehensive plan is governing that south of Oakmont, south of Lugano, but north, that urban cluster goes out to 143rd. And so you can see the development in and around that area. You mentioned Arbor Greens, we're aware of that. West End Golf Course is for sale. We don't know the future of that. And so that is a major concern of this. Currently that whole area is zoned for Meadowbrook. Meadowbrook is already 100 students over capacity. So that is something that we're thinking about. You can see that reflected in the initial options. You can see it reflected in the later options as well. So absolutely, that is something that we are thinking about daily, quarterly, and yearly here, and is a major part of this process. As part of the SPAC, we looked at the vacant land available. I'm not trying to take all the time up, but I think it's an important explanation. As part of SPAC, we looked at the vacant land available in conjunction with the county growth management within the urban cluster. And the amount of development they still anticipated to occur. So that's something that we're looking at, not only tracking as it's coming along, looking at what's coming up in 5 to 10 years down the road as best we can.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John. So as we're closing out tonight, I'd like to again remind everyone to visit the rezoning website and take advantage of that citizen input form to give your ratings on the various plans, and also please attend the input meetings, the school board meetings, and the feedback session so that the board can hear from you. And we appreciate all of the wonderful comments we got tonight. I think much of this will be reflected in our notes and be available to have an influence on these plans. So
it's been a wonderful evening. Thank you all for the information.
Let's turn it over to Mr. Tomlinson to take us out.
I just echo everybody that participated. Thank you, gentlemen, and Ms. Neal, for very well prepared. I learned several things there too, and I've been on that website quite a bit, so I appreciate that. And thank you, parents, for opening up and all your comments. And I know it's a touchy subject for everyone, and even as a principal, as I look at these different iterations, trust me, it hits me in different emotions too. If it's, certain neighborhoods go one place, certain neighborhoods go another, we keep some, we lose some. So know that we're all, looking at it, and it's one of those things that it'll come down to a board decision, obviously, but hopefully the comments that were made will be heard and suggestions will be taken under consideration, which I think they will. And we'll keep moving forward and keep doing the good work here. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. If you have any further questions, parents here at Chiles, you can reach out to me. I'll help you the best I can. I don't think I'll have a lot of specific answers for you, but I see you in car rider line and out front in different places. So please reach out to me and ask me, and I'll try my best to answer those as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Go Cheetahs.
Thanks.